Hello and welcome to Ad Q&A Live episode 25. I'm Nick Sinitra and today we're talking about waterfall retargeting strategy. Now, if you're anything like me, you've been told your entire life not to go chasing waterfalls, but I'm going to try to explain why you might want to consider doing exactly that. So let's set it up. You are an advertiser and you got people coming to your site. You want to retarget them. You want to maybe offer them something nice, but you also know that this day and age, there's a lot of people, a lot of consumers that have gotten wise to this behavior on the part of advertisers where, they can go in as a consumer, they can add something to their shopping cart, and if they don't check out within a couple of days, they're going to get usually an offer, they're going to get an ad giving them a discount code for, 10, 20, 30% off, right? So you as an advertiser, how can you make sure that you are not giving away too much, right? How can you basically set up a sophisticated retargeting strategy so that you don't have this scenario happen, right? Where you always sort of extract the maximum, AOV, LTV, however you want to think about it, from each and every consumer. Cool, so that's kind of the basic setup. Before I get too far down the rabbit hole on the whole waterfall setup, let's talk for a minute briefly about what retargeting actually is. If you are not an industry veteran, if you're kind of watching these videos learning about advertising for the first time, let me just explain briefly in 3-4 minutes what retargeting is. So first off, let me start by being a little bit pedantic when I point out that retargeting is a little bit of a misleading nomenclature, right? It's a misnomer. That's what I was trying to say. So retargeting, you're not necessarily targeting something again in the same way that refried beans are fried more than once, right? People are getting to your site and you are then targeting them later. You maybe didn't target them in the first place. They might have gotten to your site organically. Okay, that little pedantic thing out of the way, let's talk about how retargeting is usually done, how and why. So you have pixels, basically, from your various ad platforms, Facebook, whatever, Google Ads, Steelhouse, Criteo, whatever different ad platforms you're using. You got these pixels on your site, and generally what you can do is you can build an audience of individuals that have just visited your site within a period of time which you specify, right? And so a common retargeting strategy is to do what I sort of talked about earlier, which is if somebody comes to your site, and maybe let's say they don't just come to your site, but maybe they take an additional action, like adding something to their shopping cart, but they didn't purchase, then you can then retarget them, right? Sometimes for the first time, explicitly, right, with specific ads, right? So now you've got basically this retargeting pool of individuals who had some intent, right? They had some purchase intent potentially because they either came to your site, let's say, or came to your site and took an additional action like adding to cart, maybe initiating checkout, but they didn't go all the way, right? They didn't actually make a purchase. And the way that this is done is that you essentially have one bigger audience, right? You've got essentially an audience of people that visited your site. Within that audience, you've got maybe a sub-audience of people that added to cart, let's say, and then even a smaller audience in here of people that checked out, right? Checkout, right? So here's just website visitors, right? And then you've got add to cart, maybe call that add to cart, ATC, and then checkout. So you got a lot of people that are visiting your site. Maybe I should have made these circles bigger. Hopefully you can see this. You've got a smaller set of those adding to cart, right? This should actually be self-contained in there. Let me actually do this a little bit differently. I'm going to back up. All right, ignore what you just saw. Erase that from your memory. Everyone who is going to add to cart will have visited your site, right? You can't add something to the cart unless you're on the site. So there's going to be 100% overlap here, right? So this is your add to cart. And then you've got your sort of checkout here, right? In order to check out, you had to, of course, have visited the site and added to cart in order to be able to check out. But you can see these circles are sort of nested, right? So here's your smallest subset. And then even within that is an even smaller little subset of the people who actually purchased your product, right? That small little circle in there. So what you're doing basically from a retargeting perspective is let's say you want to target website visitors who didn't purchase. Essentially, you would be targeting this whole big circle minus this small one right here. Cool. So maybe, I don't know, hopefully you can see that. So essentially you have this whole big circle and the only people you aren't targeting is that small circle. Now, we're going to get into the waterfall piece. We're going to talk about, there's a time element here too, right? Where this could be really for any period of time, but which period of time you target is important when it comes to this waterfall strategy. So let me erase this here for a second. And I can redraw this again bigger later. But so let's set up the scenario, right? You know that there's a lot of smart shoppers now who are coming to your site, who are adding something to their cart, and who are then, or just visiting the site in general, maybe not even necessarily adding to your cart, and who are then have done that basically with the intent of being retargeted, right? Then they know this is a behavior that advertisers do, where exclude those sort of deal-seeking customers, right? Give them an opportunity to convert at full price, and sort of sift them out, and then still potentially offer a discount, but to a later time period, right? Where you've already sort of filtered those people out, right? Maybe they wait a week and they go, okay, well, if I was going to get targeted, I would have been targeted already. So I'm either going to buy something else, or I'm going to go ahead and buy that product at full price, right? So let's kind of draw the scenario out. So essentially, you've got time scale here from, let's say, day 0 to day 30, right? Well, let's divide this up into roughly 4 blocks, where you essentially have, day 7, day 14, day 20, 28. Am I doing this right? 21, sorry. Man, it's been one of those days. I guess I haven't had enough coffee. All right, 21, and then this will be a slightly longer period, so 30. So it's not exactly a multiple of 7. Okay, so what you want to do basically here, in order to set up the retargeting strategy this way, where you're going to do something special for people in this block, let's say, or maybe 7 to 14, or maybe 14 to 21, or 21 to 30, you're going to need to build a couple of audiences in order to set this up. Now, the way that you are going to do this is going to vary a little bit from one platform to the next, but the underlying principle is going to be the same regardless of the platform that you're using. So first of all, you're going to need a couple of segments. One that you're going to need is this block right here. You're going to need to know website visitors between day 0 and day 7. Okay. You're also going to need to know this block, right? Basically day 0 to 14. And then you're going to need to know this block, which is day 0, let's say, to 21. If what you want to do is, let's say for people in this area, you want to do like 0% discount for anybody that visited within the last 7 days and hasn't purchased, because you know that they're wise to your techniques, right? Or the techniques other advertisers are employing. And maybe in here, from day 7 to 14%, you're willing to actually kind of put something out there. Maybe you're willing to go up to like a 10% discount. So here you want to do 10%. This is days from initial visit. And then this really, like let's say day 14 to 30 is kind of your last grasp attempt to really close that customer, right? So let's actually push that one out. And then in this time period, we want to do, maybe 20%. Okay. So now you got to build these different audiences. So this is day 0 to 7. This is day 0 to 14. And then this is day 0 to 30. So the way this is going to work is you're going to have to basically build a couple different retargeting audiences. So retargeting audience 1, so this is the ones you're going to need here. So retargeting audience 1, let's just do below the line, is going to be anyone who's in this range, right? And in this case, all you really need is that first audience you built, the 0 to 7, right? For them, you're still going to show them a retargeting ad, and you're going to mix up the messaging a little bit. You're going to maybe make it, try a different angle, right? Whatever angle you tried before either wasn't effective at getting that person to make a decision right away, or this person is sort of trying to wait and see what happens, right? Maybe they're doing more research, or maybe they're banking on the fact that you're going to come retarget them and give them a 5%, 10% off discount. So first of all, for your retargeting pool, for the 0%, you're just going to use this first block, right? It's just going to be anyone who visited the site in the last 0 to 7 days, and really your only exclusion is going to be the people who already purchased, right? Obviously, if people already purchased, you shouldn't be wasting any media spend retargeting them, unless it's for like a cross-sell or upsell or something like that, which is a whole kind of different use case. But if you just sell one thing and they already bought that one thing, there's no point wasting any media spend showing ads to them again, because they already bought it, right? This happened to me, when I was getting married, in the lead up to getting married. I was doing a lot of research online about engagement rings, and then for like 2 years afterwards, I was getting ads for engagement rings, which blew my mind because I think the longest look back period you can have is like 180 days. So I don't know what they were doing, but it was like, guys, it's like, he's dead, Jim, damn it, he's dead. Like, I already spent the money, it's done, it's over, go home. So this is the first one, right? So that's all you need for this initial pool that's the 0 to 7 days. You just need that one block, right? And for them, you get nothing. Good day, sir, right? It's just like, hey, here's a different message. That's all. Cool. So let's just go ahead and erase that. So we'll just kind of draw these different scenarios below the line, right? And just make a little note here. This is basically like your resources that you have to draw on. And I'm going to use these different building blocks to build out these different scenarios. Now, how are we going to do this scenario where we want to offer 10% off, but only to the individuals who have been to the site but not purchased between days 7 and 14, right? Like here, we already have the one of people that visited the site within the past 7 days, and we want to offer them nothing special, right? But if you visited the site between 7 and 14 days ago, we actually do now want to give you something special. So now there's two things that we need. We need the 0 to 14 block here, right? Anybody who visited within the last 14 days. And that's what we're going to include from a targeting perspective. But what we're going to do is we're essentially going to take this 0 to 7 and add it as an exclusion, right? So we have, in Facebook, in Ads Manager, you have include, right? Custom audiences, and then you have exclude. And so we're going to include the custom audience for 0 to 14, but we're going to exclude the audience for 0 to 7. And effectively what that's going to do is it's going to just give you the 7 to 14, right? And you could probably see where this is going now for this next point. And if you guessed it, good for you, nice work. It's basically just going to be the next logical step of this, is that you're essentially going to take the 0 to 30, right, custom audience, people that visited your site within the last 30 days, and instead of excluding the 0 to 7, you're going to exclude this second audience you made, which was people who visited in the last 14 days. So then, effectively, what you get, right, is an audience that's just those individuals that visited 14 to 30 days ago. And for them, you're going to offer them whatever spicier discount, right, is your sort of last attempt. Like, okay, we showed you the 10%, that didn't work. And obviously, of course, again, with each of these, you're going to exclude the purchasers because, again, it makes no sense to waste any media spend on individuals who have already bought what you're trying to sell. Excuse me. Okay, cool. So there's your basic explanation of how this works and kind of why. So yeah, I mean, again, the use case here is as an advertiser, you need to really make a determination. We have a lot of partners that we work with that have this philosophy that they want to be perceived as a premium brand, right? And we respect that, right? We totally understand and respect that. They don't want to be perceived as a bargain to kind of embody this philosophy, is that they miss out on a pretty significant segment of shoppers, right? A certain shopper persona. And it's a persona that I like to think about as kind of the Banana Republic shopper, right? Banana Republic goes on sale pretty often, and so people know that they can always count on the sale around the corner. And again, that's what a lot of these brands are trying to avoid. But the thing is that these shoppers really fit a certain persona, which is they basically won't pay full price on principle, right? So no matter how small the discount, it could be 5%, it could be 2 or 3%, it could be any little small thing, like get a free pair of socks with your purchase, that they just won't purchase otherwise, right? Because it's a matter of principle. It's like a philosophy for them. So if you as a business are okay with just never selling to people who kind of fit that persona, cool, right? But you have to recognize that there's an opportunity cost there, right? That there's potentially a significant number of individuals who would buy your product if you were willing to offer some concession, right? And the challenge here, and what this tries to address, the waterfall strategy, is how do we filter out the people that are just, who would buy at full price, right? Who are just trying to get something extra, by gaming the system, right? And this is an approach to basically weed them out by not showing those massive discounts, right, to individuals who are just sort of trying to take that tack, right? And so, only offering the biggest discount when people have been to your site within the past, 14 to 30 days. Now, something else that's worth mentioning here is that you should, before you kind of undertake this exercise, you should have an understanding of what the consideration period is, right? If yours is a very inexpensive product, that's not what most might consider a considered purchase, right? So it's not like 3, 4, 500 bucks where people need to think about it. Maybe they need to discuss it with their, you might actually want to push these timelines out because there's just naturally going to be a longer period after somebody visits your site, right? Where they're going to need to kind of talk themselves into it and rationalize and, have that conversation in their household about whether or not to do it. If it's a cheap product, right? If it's like a $10, book or, a cheap service or something like that, I mean, probably the consideration period is relatively short. And this also depends on the industry too. So like one thing we've heard recently about CBD advertisers is because there's so much hype about CBD right now, there's so many different people in the space, but there's a lack of education on the part of the consumer that this consideration period, right, this sort of latency between initial exposure to a brand and actually a determination about whether or not to purchase is actually longer for CBD than for many other products of a similar price point, right? Because there's so much noise and not enough education. So these are all kinds of things that you need to factor in is like, when people are buying your product, how quickly are they doing it after their initial exposure, right? And that needs to an extent, inform how you set up your waterfall, right? And of course, price point and how much time people are taking to think about it and all that. Cool. So we are at about 17 minutes on the dot. I'm going to call it here. Hopefully you found that interesting. If you have any questions, as usual, please do not hesitate to leave us a comment in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy it, and keep an eye out. We're going to have new content coming out every week. Thanks again for watching. I'm Nick Sinitra. Tune in again next time. Bye.